is just talk a little bit about mixed fractions. You don't use mixed fractions too much in algebra, but this is a primer, so we'll talk a little bit about them. Up until now, we've always represented fractions as one number over another number. And I've always kind of explained that as usually you're talking about dealing with less than one. Like if you have half a candy bar, that's why we use fractions. 1/3 of a candy bar, 1/8 of a candy bar, right? 1/16 of a candy bar would be a really tiny piece of a candy bar, 1 out of 16 pieces, right? But if you ever see something like this, 4 3/5, this is what we call a mixed fraction. What it means is I have 4 whole pizzas plus 3/5 of another one. That's what it means. A mixed fraction is nothing complicated. It just means I have this many whole candy bars plus 3/5, which is less than 1, of another piece of a candy bar. That's what it means. That's all it is. So if you ever see a problem where you have to add these guys to something like 3/5, this stumps a lot of students because you have this weird number out front, you're not really sure how to handle it. The easiest way to probably do that is to convert this mixed fraction to an improper fraction. It's probably the easiest way to handle it. And the way you do it is like this. And we've covered all of this in the pre-algebra tutor and all of that as well, but just as a primer. You take the 5 on the bottom, multiply by 4. In this case, it's going to give you 20. You add in the top number, so you're going to get 23. That's going to be the new top number, 23. And then the bottom number always stays the same. So that's it. You've converted that back to an improper fraction. Notice the top number is bigger than the bottom. Any of those examples before where the top number was bigger than the bottom, it just meant that I had more than one of something. In this case, it's 4 3/5, same thing as 23/5. I just had more of a pizza, plus a fractional part left over. Okay? But to add them, it's just much easier to convert back this way. So 4 times 5 is 20, plus 3 gives me the 23. Always keep the bottom. And now I need to add the 3/5 to it. And now the same rules pick up. I mean, there's nothing different. 23 plus 3 is 26. And on the bottom, you still keep the number, which is 5. So 26 fifths. Now, again, in algebra, you're almost always going to leave it like this. But, you know, occasionally a teacher might ask you to take this improper fraction and convert it back into a mixed fraction. And that's very easy also, because don't forget, fractions are really just division. So what we have here is 26 divided by 5, really, is what we have. How many times can 5 actually go into 26? Well, you think about it, 5 times 2 is 10, 5 times 3 is 15, 5 times 4 is 20, getting closer, 5 times 5 is 25. That's pretty darn close. If we do 5 times 6, that's 30, and that's too big. So we go back to 5 times 5. So it'll go in 5 times. We draw a big 5 out in front, right? So it goes in 5 times. 5 times 5 is 25. But we had 26 things on top, so 26 minus 25 is 1. So we had a remainder of 1. We always write it over 5. So it's 5 1/5. I'll say that one more time. You're doing the division, 26 divided by 5. It goes 5 times. But the remainder is like 1 left over because 5 times 5 only gave us 25. We didn't quite get all the way up to 26. We had 1 left over. We take that 1 that was left over, we write it over 5. And if you want to check your work, you can always go backwards. 5 times 5 is 25, plus 1 is 26 over 5. So it checks. Okay, you can always go backwards and check in algebra. Almost always. What if you had 3 1/3 minus 1 2/3? Okay. Then, again, it's going to be easier for you just to convert both of these mixed fractions to improper fractions. So we'll work with this one first. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 1 gives us 10. Always keep the bottom number of 3. Okay? Over here, 1 times 3 is 3, plus 2 gives me 5. Always keep the bottom number, which is 3. So now I have this exactly in a form that I can solve it because I've been doing this all day. 10 minus 5 is 5. Always keep the bottom number of 3. 5/3 is the answer, and you can just circle that. But if your teacher, for some reason, wants you to convert it back to a mixed fraction, you can just do the division. How many times will 5 go into 3? Well, it'll go 1 times 3 is 3. 2 times 3 is 6. That's too big, so it can only actually go in 1 time. How many is left over? Well, 1 times 3 is 3. I was trying to reach 5, so I have 2 left over. And I always write it over the original denominator. So it goes in 1 whole time, remainder of 2 always make it over the original guy, so 1 2/3. And if you're unsure if you've done that right, just check it. 1 times 3 is 3, plus 2 is 5, 5/3, and you've gotten the right answer. Okay, this will be our final problem. A little bit more complicated, but not a big deal. 3 3/4 minus 2 1/2. So again, we're going to do the subtraction, but let's first convert these to improper fractions. So what we'll have is 3 times 4 is 12, plus 3 is 15. Always write it over the original denominator of 4. So 15/4 minus 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. Always write it over the original denominator of 2. So here we want to do this, we've converted them, we want to do the subtraction, but we don't have common denominator. We always have to have the common denominator. Notice in this problem, it was constructed so we already had a common denominator, so we just did the work. Here we had a common denominator, so we just did the work. But here, when we get to this step, we don't have a common denominator, so we have to make them common first. So let's go ahead and rewrite this as 15/4 minus 5/2. How can we make the denominators the same? Well, here I have 4 and 2. If I just multiply this denominator by 2, and of course do the top to make it legal, I'll get 4 on the bottom, which is going to be the same as my other guy. So 15/4 minus 5 times 2 is 10 over 4. Now I've got a common denominator. So I do the subtraction. 15 minus 10 is 5/4. And that's the answer. 5/4 is the answer. But again, if your teacher or if your worksheet or whatever wants you to write it as a mixed fraction, since the top is bigger than the bottom, you can do that. How many times will 4 go into 5? It's only going to go 1 time. How many is going to be left over? Well, 4 goes into 5, 1. It's only got 1 left over because 4 is 1 less than 5, and you always write it over the original denominator, so 1 1/4. If you're unsure if that's right, just check it. 1 times 4 is 4, plus 1 gives me 5 over 4. So it does check out. It gives me the right answer. So we have concluded this section. We've covered a tremendous amount of material, and I really hope that it serves as a great primer for you because, you know, truth be told, there's a rule of thumb. If a student really understands fractions, then they probably won't have any problems understanding anything else in algebra, geometry, or anything that follows. All right, because fractions are just so useful and used in every class that you're going to use from here on out. So really make sure that you understand all of this. If you think you need more practice above and beyond this, go grab the worksheets that are available for this course. Go grab the pre-algebra course, which has even more examples. Make sure you understand fractions. We've talked about simplifying fractions. So they may look different, but they represent the same amount of stuff. When we multiply divide fractions, we don't worry about common denominators. We just do the multiplication, if it's multiplication, and simplify the result. If it's division, all we do is flip that second fraction over and change it into multiplication, and then do our work. If we're adding or subtracting, the denominators must be the same. If they are, you just do the math, and if they're not, then you may have to do a little step in here to make the denominators, like this one, the same, and then try to simplify your answer. And then finally, we talked about mixed fractions and improper fractions, converting back and forth, and also how to do some simple math with fractions. I didn't do a problem here, but if you had multiplication or division that involved a mixed fraction, you would treat it the same way. You would just convert it to an improper and then do the multiplication or division. So there's no real secret tricks here. It's just a matter of really having a great solid foundation. And you know, trust me, you really want to make sure you understand it, because later on when we get into equations with a big fraction bar and lots of stuff on the top and lots of stuff on the bottom, you don't want to be scared off by that. The only defense you have against that is making sure you understand this. And trust me on that, it'll really help you for years and years to come. So practice your problems, watch this section a few times, roll up your sleeves, get some confidence, and I guarantee you it'll help you in this class and all of your future math classes.